So the topic is compassion and liberation. And it's just a reminder that all Dharma practice is going in one direction, and that is liberation. And liberation is the agenda behind the whole thing. So we may have limited view of what we're doing, practice to be a little quieter, practice to feel less difficulty in our life, practice to feel more love and care for ourselves and each other. Right? Fine motivation, but behind all of that is liberation. And all of those are steps on the way. And what do I mean by liberation? That we arrive in this moment, you and me, with a kind of a huge history of our life story, whatever it is, and maybe more than one life. And we carry that in this moment. Our conditioning, our stories, our pains, the scars we've received, the tzalakot on the way we are shaped by our parents, by our school, by our society, by Netanyahu, by whatever, we are shaped. And our mind is shaped. Certain tracks and certain views and certain ways of looking at things. So we're very strongly shaped, and that's painful. And what we tend to be busy with is coping. Hitmodedut. That tends to be the result of all of this, that we want to survive, we want to be okay, we want to be happy, so in the end we're very busy with all this stuff trying to get things right and better. And so what happens is that in a way we sell our consciousness, because in Macharnu we sold it to all of these agendas of trying to get it right, of being okay, of being better, of being happy, of dealing with the issues and the problems and what we have on our shoulders. And we sell our consciousness to that. Consciousness is free, is like the air. But we sold it to the issues we have in life. And we put it in there, and it packages our consciousness into little packages called what I need now, or what the best, or what I have to deal with, or this virus that's around us. And so the practice of the Dharma is basically letaher, is purification, tihur. That we meet our consciousness and purify it of all this stuff, or put it out of the box of conditioning, hatnaya, memory, forms. I'm like this, the world is like that, what I need, what I want, what I have to do, what's wrong, what I suffer, my struggle, my issues, my this, my that, my that. So the movement to liberation is to kind of purify the consciousness from all of this stuff. And then the consciousness will see things differently. It will not see things through the filter of our issues and our conditioning, samsara. There's no filter. And then we'll experience that as being expanded consciousness. Toda'ah is, expanded rachaba. We'll experience that as being much freer. We'll be dancing with whatever arises. Experiences will arise. They'll be painful and they'll be pleasant. And a free consciousness is dancing with them. Just dancing with what's arising. Comes a virus, comes a ecstasy. It's out of the box, and it's a process, and we in a way clean the consciousness from all that stuff of the needs and the self and the history and the struggle. But it's not only the consciousness, it's also the heart. We do exactly the same with the heart. So when I talk about consciousness now, we can change that word to heart-mind, because the consciousness isn't a mechanical thing like a computer. The consciousness is the heart, is the heart-mind. Call it chitta in the Pali language. And it really is heart-mind. And so the heart, we do exactly the same purification with the heart as with the mind. Because the same stuff that we kind of gathered, collected on the way, and sits on our shoulders, is also sitting in the heart. As the pains and the struggle and the emotions and the difficulties and the frustrations and the angers and the irritations and disappointment, achzavot. That's the heart talking. So just as the mind is talking through the filter of all of this stuff, so the heart is talking through the filter of all of the heart stuff, which is kazech nichrat, you say, engraved in the heart. All the stories are there. We don't lose our stories. They're all there. All the experiences, the hatnaya that we've had in our life is still in us. It's not disappeared. So it's in the mind, as because they're rashatot shel ta'ei moach, and it's in the heart, as stories engraved in the heart. And heart mind are together. So we purify the heart, and one place of purifying the heart is compassion, chemla. And the pure heart, the compassionate heart, is like the pure mind, expanded. The liberated heart is like the liberated consciousness, expanded, without limits, connected to the world, free, dancing with conditions, just like the mind, dancing with what arises. And big word, love. It's a big word, but it's really what we're talking about here as well. I remember listening to a talk of Krishnamurti right here, because we used to have Krishnamurti gatherings here every year with Mukesh from India. And one talk, Krishnamurti was, he's a tough teacher. And he kept saying, whatever you think liberation is, it's not that. It's not this, it's not getting things better, it's not being happier, it's not leading a wise life, it's not this, it's not fixing yourself, it's not psychology, it's not. He said, in the end, when you get rid of all of these things, there's only one thing left. And it's just one word he used at the end of a 1 hour talk, which was 1 hour was not. And what is? One word, love. And the way he described love is, in that sense, something ultimate, universal, beyond me'eva kol boxes that we put it in. We put in the heart in boxes. And I think we really need it today, because even in our spiritual life, in our meditation practice, or in our journey, inner journey, we do tend to be a bit mind-oriented, a bit more devoted to mind and its cultural language of the Western world, and in a way cultural language of the Buddhist world, but a little bit mistaken, that the language is a mind language, but really it should be rewritten as a mind-heart language. And Besograim, I have to say that until the 3rd century after the Buddha died, the Buddhist teaching got very mind-oriented and very intellectual and very Abhidharma is a Buddhist psychology, and it's so Western, it's so dividing the world into pieces and into elements, and it's very analytic. And along came the Mahayana, the early Mahayana teachings, which led to, in the end, to Tibetan Buddhism and to Zen and to Chinese Buddhism and so on, and said, wait a minute, you've forgotten liberation, and the one place that you've really forgotten is the liberation of the heart, which is where, until that time, compassion became the key of the Tibetan practice. But when the Tibetans talk about compassion, they mean love. It's the same, it's a slightly different word. I'll explain that in a minute. But actually it means love. And we really need it. And our practice can get a little bit dry. We can feel a bit lonely, meditating in the morning, and I'm just on myself. And then we can get critical of ourselves if our meditation isn't so good, and we're not sure how our meditation or our spiritual life can really affect others, and we're not sure how it can go out and deal with viruses and issues like that in the community. And we can sometimes feel our spiritual life gets a little bit contracted and dried, and then it's compassion that's missing, or love that's missing, and we need to lift it up to energize the love, energize the heart. Heart practice or mind practice, and I'm trying to put them in the same box now, in the same pot. Both of them work with what is. The Buddhist teaching is only about that. It's about what is. What's our experience? It's not about elevating, because lalot mashulam, even compassion is being ultimate, beyond, up there. It's not about up there. It's not about heaven. And it's what is. And what is the stuff that when the heart meets the world, it feels pain. It feels conditioned. It feels, engraved in that koladavre Nikhratu. It feels that. The heart, when it looks at what is, it feels the pain. Just like the mind, when it looks at what is, sees, oh, well, that stuff is sitting in my mind. All that history, all that condition, the mind sees it. So that's where we start. That's a place where we start. We start from that place with the heart and the mind. It's funny, we teach a lot of retreats, about love. We just did one last 2 weeks ago, a 1-week retreat on love, and it was very beautiful. Kibbutz Indoor also outside. And what happens? What often tends to come up is non-love. I'm here for a week trying to practice love, and where's the anger coming from? What's all that anger arising? Why? I shouldn't be. I should be full of love and peace. And all I feel is irritation and this, and it's too hot, and it's not right, and all the stuff out there in the world out there, and this is not working, and I can't sleep at night, and but that is the place where we can't train the heart to go beyond its limits if we don't know what the limits are. We need to touch those places in order to let go of the limitations on the heart and on the mind. We need to know what they are. We need to touch them. So the Dharma practice does touch those places, the limits to the heart. And one of the things that happens is that as soon as we sort of try and train the heart to a little bit to open, so the angers come up. And there's a nice image that I originally heard it from Goenka, that the practice of love is like drops of cool water on a hot plate. And what happens is the cool water touches the hot plate, and then it kind of reacts. But if you keep drops and drops and drops and drops, it gradually cools down the hot plate, and there's many examples, sometimes very dramatic examples, of people who are practicing love, metta, compassion in retreat, and feel a lot of anger and a lot of reactivity and pain. And then all of a sudden something changes, and there is the sense of endless love that appears God knows from where. It just arises in the middle of the angers and the issues and the this. So when the heart expresses all of these things, our reaction has to be welcome. And you. And you. Anger, and you. Come and join. We can remember that one character of the heart is that it connects us to the world. Our emotions are the responses we have to the world. You can say our mind is also, our thoughts, but they're more subtle. The emotions are very immediate. Someone says something and boom, up come the emotions, the hormones, the heart language is straight away. So it's all the time responding, and in the word that's used in the tradition is quivering, retet, that the heart is quivering, retet halev, with the world. So if the heart is quivering, is vibrating with the world, if the world expresses pain, then the heart will vibrate with compassion. If the world is just there without pain, or there is just being, then the heart responds with just love. If the world presents with joy, then the heart responds with joy. And that's mudita. Mudita is the joy when meeting the joy of the world. Karuna, compassion, is pain, is compassion when the heart meets the pain of the world. And metta is just the love when the heart meets the world, the ground of love. So it's the heart is, when we talk about heart practice, it's really about meeting the world. It's about our connections with the world. And it's based on empathy. And empathy is something, even though in this society empathy is not really encouraged and not really given that much value, and we're a world of individuals and bodedim a little bit, especially today when everyone is stuck with their screens and their phones and their computers. It's still a world that's rather non-empathic. But I did actually hear a talk by Zuckerman, who is the guy of Facebook, and he gave a talk, and I saw it on a screen in the conference in Israel, and someone said, "What are you doing this whole thing for? What's its value? What's Facebook doing?" And he says, "The whole purpose of Facebook is to create more empathy in the world." Are you crazy? That's what he said. What a, and these people locked with their screen. But it is based on empathy, and however much we feel that we don't have it, and it's so easy to feel that we don't have it when we're in a childhood stuck in a room in a dira somewhere in, never mind, London or Ramat Gan, and we don't feel the empathy, but actually we do. One of the places that we can really practice compassion is actually restoring our empathy and trusting empathy that we have more than we think. Right now, I can feel that you're giving me your attention. I can feel it. And there is attention. And that attention is not dry. I can see it in the eyes. And that has empathy in it already. Attention is basically running on the engine of empathy. It's the fact that we pay attention. And in our practice, when we pay attention to our breath and our body, we're already learning empathy. We are being empathic, meaning we are with ourselves. We are with. That's empathy, is with. It's vibrating with. It's this sort of retet in. And we're not against the breath, we're just with it. We let go into it. That's empathy. And as we are with the breath, so we are with the eyes of someone else. Enaim shel hazulat. It isn't different. So we do actually learn empathy, even though it seems a little bit like meditation practice is about tzumat lev and mindfulness. It has in it empathy as well. And I'll talk about that in a minute, because in a minute I'm going to talk about practice, how to practice developing compassion. But we have it from a childhood, and my favorite story, which maybe you've already heard, but I can't help it, is my granddaughter Daria. And she was running at the age of, she's now 11, but at the age of 3, she was running past our house in full run, and as she ran past, she saw a little black dot, a tiny black dot on a stone, just a little tiny black spot on a stone. And she ran past and she said, "Vetach who מחפש את האמא שלו. And then I heard this and I thought, what? That's crazy. And I looked, and it was a little piece of the wing of a beetle, of חרק. כנף של חרק, חתיכה קטנה של כנף של חרק. חתיכה כזה גודל, על האבן. And as she ran past, she said, בטח הוא היה בדרך לחפש אמא שלו. Wow. So, we have it as children, we have that empathy, that heart. And it's not lost. It's not lost. We need to give it more trust, understanding that we do have it. When we were doing walking meditation right now, there wasn't language of love and so on, but it's built into the system. It was built into walking on this earth, connecting with our body, connecting with our life, connecting with the world. It's there. The heart was there, even though maybe it wasn't big time because they're banging the drum of the heart. Compassion acknowledges, knows our vulnerability. This is really, really important. This body and this person, these people, you lot, you're just here like this for a moment in this body. That's it, all of us. We're just born and that's it. So we arrive in this body and there is a basic vulnerability that we can't ignore. If we try and ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, we're in for trouble. We're trying to escape from our vulnerability. We cover it over. We try and control life. We try and control things. So vulnerability is very important as part of the truth of Dharma. And when we really allow vulnerability, pigiyut, you understand the word? You're okay with it. You thought it was going to be intellectual talks, but if we're really close to our vulnerability, this is not a living with a disaster story. This is living with the truth. And we feel freer because of it. I'm living in this moment. This moment is just what it is. I don't make pressure on myself or the world to control, to pretend that I'm not ein pigiyut, to cover over the pigiyut with nice things or with holidays or with hitmakruyot, addictions, or with, diversions or entertainments, or we just don't cover. We allow vulnerability, and then it's fine to be vulnerable. It actually helps us to be free. I remember when we had a few retreats some years ago with cancer patients. And really, we had 50 cancer patients every time. We did it at Beit Oren, a few other places. And it started with a lot of struggle and pain and tears and people sharing a bit their struggle of slowly, over 3-4 days, the whole thing changed. And people came up with kind of beautiful responses. I'm fed up with this cancer. I don't want to know about it. I'm going to live differently. I'm going to paint and draw and play music. And I don't care a damn for my cancer. It's bullshit. And people were saying this. And the language changing in 3 to 4 days of paying attention, allowing vulnerability, not having this kind of language of, oi, 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 we're vulnerable, we're this disaster narrative, because the narrative, Instead of that life narrative. Yes, we're vulnerable. Okay, I might not have such a long future. That's all. Okay, my future may be a bit shorter than I thought before. That's all it is. It's not more than that. Anyway, we don't know. So gradually, the truth of vulnerability is freeing us to live in the moment as the preciousness of this moment. And it frees the heart. Instead of control and trying to kind of make things better and get things right and get things comfortable, we know vulnerability, and that touches the heart, and then from there compassion arises. It needs us to listen, not to shut down. Our heart needs to listen. Our heart, that's this story of Daria, my granddaughter. I would call it listening. She felt this charak katan. She just felt it. It's life. I would call it listening. We listen to ourselves. We listen to each other. We listen to the vulnerability of each other. In some way it's difficult these days, but in some way it's a blessing that there's a virus that's threatening everybody. You can argue with me if you want, but I can't help saying it. In some way it's a blessing, because it's teaching us a truth that we forgot, and especially in the culture, that everything is possible, that we can do everything, that we can control everything, medicine, science, technology, any food we want, anything we need, any travel we need, anything the planet will give us, we take. And it's just forgetting. And along comes a virus to say, stop. Human vulnerability, you forgot. And look where you are and what you're doing. So in some way it's a blessing, in some way it isn't. It is painful. And our reaction to that is only compassion. From compassion, I don't necessarily tell people what I'm said to you now, because compassion, I don't want to throw anything on people's heads. But anyone who's ready to listen, I'll say the same message. So, compassion is chemla, but I do like the original word rachamim, the biblical word, because it really it's rechem barabim, nachon. It's a few of them. It has in it this quality of rechem. It's so lovely, and that I think it's got a really is a key understanding of compassion. Rechem, a womb that holds, that is a safe place, that gives life. And in the Kabbalah that you know, and that's interesting, I learned from Rachel about Rachamim being on the male side of the Eitz HaChaim, of the Sfirot. And the reason it's on the male side is it's active. It's Rachamim is going out to the world, is a movement of being with the world, of going out into the world, of holding the world. And so it has this aspect of male. So in the Tibetan world, as I say, compassion is like love, and it's pretty well like in the Theravada world we call metta. But as love, it's a very big thing. In the Tibetan and in a way metta in the Theravada world is actually seen as the kind of the gulu, a devik, that holds the whole world together. It's what holds everything together. It's how we are with each other, with the world, with the trees, with our breath, with the life. It's the being with. And it's in the Tibetan tradition, it's led to the Bodhisattva as the embodiment of compassion. And the Bodhisattva, the word Bodhisattva is coming originally from Sanskrit. Bodhi is a pure heart mind, and Sattva is balance, is harmony, is Sattva, you may know the word. And the Bodhisattva is manifesting compassion in the world, using upaya, skill, and using the qualities of heart, mind. And so I know that many, many people have in their heart the wish to be bodhisattvas. Every person, in a way, wants to be a doctor or a psychologist or maybe a teacher in school, or wants to help others in different ways. In a way, becomes a bodhisattva in a small way, which is devotion to helping others in the world and not just looking after ourselves. However, very quickly, doctors, teachers, psychologists, and others find their compassion exhausted. They have a very small compassion pot, and it gets all used up, especially in the systems that are built in systems in the school and systems in the hospital and systems of the modern world, which really dries up compassion. So let's talk a little bit about how you practice developing compassion. So one of the classic Theravada, and to some extent Tibetan, is using language, phrases, using phrases which we use in retreat. And phrases are quite strong in the mind as statements. They're kind of emdot, they're statements. So they have a vibration, a strong vibration, a phrase. So we use phrases like simply, may you be free of suffering. May you be free of risk and harm. May you be happy. May you be free of pain, and may you be happy. It's a kind of request. May you is a wish. But not so much a wish that you really want a result, because there's no measuring of it. It's not that you're going to have to have a result, because you don't know what's going to happen. But it's the language that the heart knows that triggers the direction of the heart. So the heart knows that language very well. May I be happy. May I be free of suffering. We have a pain in the body or a sickness, and the heart knows to say, oh, I really wish I could get out of this. Oh, I really wish change. Oh, I really wish to be happier. Oh, I really wish. So we're already there with that language of the heart. And so we use that language of the heart to kind of trigger the heart into compassion, into knowing pain and vibrating with the pain, with the vulnerability. And one of the main places that people who are exhausted have compassion exhaustion, kamo rofim, one of the main places that they can really work to develop compassion is to know their own vulnerability, to really understand vulnerability, pegiyut, shavrirut, shel atzmeinu, v'shel kol yitzurim. So if a doctor really feels his or her vulnerability, he will look at the patients differently. And we can do this in relation to others, in relation to ourselves. We feel all beings are fragile, and we ourselves fragile, because they're shavrir. We feel our vulnerability and vulnerability of others. And we begin to feel vulnerability of all creatures, everyone. The insect that I mentioned, the birds in the trees, they're all vulnerable, all life. And all of a sudden we're in the same boat. We're not separate from the birds and the insects and the animals that struggle to survive. When you get close to nature, you see how much struggle it is just to be, just to survive, just to eat, drink, be healthy. So that knowledge is really helpful, to be aware of our own vulnerability and vulnerability of all other beings, and feel we're all in the same boat. And this will also help to reduce the tendency and nitiyah that compassion moves to pity. Pity, rachamim in the modern Hebrew. So bimkom chemla, rachamim. Rachamim is, I'm okay, and I give maybe tzedakah to mishu misken. But it's not the same as sharing vulnerability, being the same as the person that's fragile and in pain. So another aspect of practice is that we can feel that it's the action, and here we talk about rachamim as this male aspect, rachamim biblical, the safa, tanachi. When we go out in the street, or when we meet each other, I mean, we can just feel it. Supposing we have a good meditation in the morning, and then we get up, and we go out in the street, how do we look at the first person we meet? Could be a Egged bus driver, I don't know. How do we look? We're bound to look differently at that person. Our heart will be, and if that person we can feel is struggling, our heart will be touched. It happens by itself. But we can feel that as the active part. So if we're sitting quietly and practicing, we are also practicing in a way the active part, because we're active while in meditation, but we're a little more closed. So compassion, when we practice of compassion, is helped by going in and going out. And we have to kind of move away from a sense that meditation practice is private, is something I do with myself, and is in a way sagur kazeh, אנחנו סוגרים את עצמנו בתוך החדר, sheket. And he's right in the instructions of the Buddha from the very beginning. Awareness in and awareness out. Inside here, out in the world. The two are the same. So maybe in terms of some sort of tradition, we a little bit too much in the meditation practice, which is okay. It doesn't matter. Can't do everything at once. So it's all right to remember to connect with ourselves and to feel a little bit in. But slowly we need to be in and out. So if we practicing meditation in the world will open our heart. When we practice awareness, presence, nochachut, as we go into the supermarket, we will feel more what the other people are in the supermarket that we meet, how they are. It happened by itself. We will look in the eyes and smile at the woman taking our money. It'll happen by itself. But just to be aware of meditation in action leads us to compassion, and that's part of the tipuach, the development. Compassion in action is also protecting ourselves, by the way. It's not only others. It's also looking after ourselves. That's compassion in action. So if we meditate, we are more aware, we open our heart, and we see what is needed by this being. That's fine. Sometimes we get a bit out of proportion and we only help other people and we ourselves give ourselves a hard time. But helping ourselves is like helping Hazulat, the other. So that this sense of meditation and our inner development manifest in the world, going out in the world, it means that compassion doesn't have an address. Ein katovet specific. HaKatovot kol hazman acher. 1 minute it's me, next minute it's the charakim, next minute it's the trees, next minute it's the birds, next minute it's you guys, next minute is anybody. Even people giving us a hard time. Doesn't make any difference. So another place of practice is to recognize the limits to our compassion. Where we stuck, where we cannot. So for example, we can feel compassionate and then someone annoys us. That's a place of practice. Compassion, aval. As soon as the aval appears, that's a place of practice. That's the place of the limit of compassion. Compassion, aval bat im yesh 30 kita tet ילדים בכיתה. זה יותר מדי. I experienced that myself. I will never do it again. I was trying to teach kids in the kibbutz Kabri, the school there. Not for me. That's why I'm so compassionate to teachers. What a difficult life they have. I had an experience last year in California. I was doing a tour of California and teaching in loads of different centers in a very short time, every day another center. And Merkazei Dharma. And then driving on the freeways between every day another, mere kilometer to another center, to another place in California. On the freeways. And I was sick at the time. And I remember feeling so disgusted with the freeways and the ugliness and the factories and the dirt and the neon adverts everywhere, and no grace. Ein chen. I didn't find anything. But as soon as I realized that that was a feeling coming up inside me, I really practiced that it didn't last more than shniya echad. And the practice was immediately changing the track, like Waze. You goes blip, and then you go another direction, kivun acher. And so I did that in my own heart, and every time began to feel compassion to all the people driving next to me, thousands and thousands of cars, all along, everyone driving, everyone with their life, everyone with their history, everyone with their pains, everyone with their struggle, everyone with their existence, and everyone with their God inside, their Buddha nature. And all thousands and thousands, my heart went to them. And they're building the factories. Why? Because they want something better. They want, I just suddenly changed the channel totally. And that was my practice. And as soon as I met the limit of the compassion, to shift, blip. Anyway, we can feel our limit, and it's okay to be limited. And it's that place where we say, I don't have more compassion in me. I don't want the neighbors. I'm compassion of our Lola the politikaim. I have compassion of our Lola Trump. I have compassion of our Lola Shchenim Sheli. I have compassion of our... So that's our limit, and I think that's one of the practices, to keep expanding the limit. And when we feel resistance, that's the place of practice. Notice the resistance. Hold it in attention. Feel that it's pain, and in a way give compassion to our resistance to compassion, to our limit. That also needs compassion, but it also needs awareness. A heart, mind, knowing the limits and moving them a bit, shifting the gaze. So, and the final point is we need to notice compassion is in action. When we go out in the world, we will notice it more, the way we are with the world. But we kind of really feel and develop empathy while being in the world. Empathy and compassion is something we do develop, and we can develop. So instead of being locked in our thoughts, for example, we're going to the supermarket, we can consciously feel ourselves with this, the world, the other people, the dog passing by, the person in the supermarket. It can be conscious practice. No, I will not be locked down. I'm going to look at people's eyes. I will see how they are, each one I meet. I will see my engagement with everything. And kind of really make it practice to feel our heart triggered by the world, or again and again and again and again. I remember Jack Cornfield when he was visiting, and he's very much heart-oriented. I don't know if you've heard of his talks or you read his books, but he's very much a heart-oriented practitioner. And when he was, I met him quite a bit when he was here, and I've done quite a few things with him over the years. And one day I met him, and he said, I said, what have you been doing all day? He said, I was walking with Nitzolei Shoah, and we walked through Mea Sharim. I said, how many people? 6. And how long were you? Well, we all day. Many hours. We were just walking. And my heart was so touched. I just needed to walk with them. And I suddenly felt his, the heart energy. Doesn't measure, although he's a kind of star in a way, and sold millions of books and this and that. But it didn't matter. His heart was touched by 6 old people walking through Jerusalem, and he said, "I have to walk with them." And that's what I mean. Be engaged in life. As you're engaged, it's you know, maybe a little bit ki'ilu, but that's all right. As you're engaged, you'll feel your heart is triggered. So do things even if you feel you're not ready. Go out in life and feel, even if you feel you're not ready. We're never ready. But go out and do things in life, help others and so on, as if, and the compassion will come from there by itself. You'll just feel more. That's will be your life. Less shut down, more open, more engaged, more flowing, less separate, and less fear. Less fear. Just go out there again and again, and you'll find that the heart will just by itself will just get bigger, will just expand. Okay, thank you. So we'll have a couple of questions, although I do have to go in a minute, but we'll have more questions later in the day, okay, after the afternoon.